I recently watched one of Wang Chuqin's matches. Which of his return techniques do people like the most? That's the technique we're covering today. For example, the backhand banana flick. I've tried it, and in a match, it's genuinely more stable than a short push. Short pushes and flicks require very precise judgment, but you can execute a banana flick without perfect judgment. They now have a long push technique. It's not a long chop, but a push that sends the ball long. There's also a push flick. Our traditional serve-receive was the long chop, but you'll find the long chop is slow. When the ball comes, it's a bit like a flat push. And there's also the push flick. It feels like it's jamming you, forcing a low-quality return so they can attack your next shot. Because if you chop with heavy spin, their return loop will carry a lot of topspin, making it very easy for your counter loop to fly long. Alright, let's first explain the flat push and the push flick. Our traditional push focuses on spin. You have to bite the ball and chop down. This is how you add spin. The second type, which they use often, is a forward push that's not just forward, but forward and downward. Watch closely. I'll show you one with some speed. I feel it's fast and heavy. One way is to use your fingers and wrist, accelerating with a downward cutting friction. The other way is to keep your fingers and wrist completely still. You fix the racket angle, and then simply push forward and downward. Here, the fingers and wrist are still, because using friction will inevitably slow you down. See, if your opponent's footwork is slow on the receive, I'll push like this. It's definitely the fastest. If they struggle with heavy spin, then I'll definitely chop it heavy. You see, adding heavy spin does slow the ball down, not as fast as their push. If the opponent's footwork is slow, then don't move your wrist. Let the ball contact the bottom half of your racket. Extend your arm far, and get very close to the ball. Then, move downward. Push like this, and the ball will be very fast. The wrist is fixed, with no racket head rotation or finger acceleration. The main idea is to let the ball make contact, then cut it sideways and downward. Let me demonstrate a couple more. I think this works for any ball that isn't heavy sidespin topspin. In a match, you must have variation to make your opponent doubt their attack. If you only use heavy spin, I can just open my racket face, add some friction, and hit a high loop. So, for us amateurs, it's better to have more tricks up our sleeve. Notice that my last shot was at the peak of the bounce. If you push on the rise, it's very easy to lose control. For a high-quality shot like a heavy long chop, it all depends on a finger-driven push. This creates a heavy backspin that makes the ball dip significantly after bouncing, though it won't be as fast. The second one is also pushed at the peak. See how fast that is? As soon as the ball bounces up, push down at the peak. I'm telling you, someone with poor footwork won't keep up. The wrist is fixed. Push the racket face forward and downward. The main focus is speed. Now, some players ask, can I hit it on the rise? If you anticipate well, it's fine. But I'm worried a long ball will pin you back, leaving you with only the peak of the bounce. That's the risk. If you can take it on the rise, you'll have the fastest tempo, but it's also very risky. I think any spin is fine, unless it's a very kicky sidespin topspin that you might not be able to control. Look everyone, let me test the spin for you. See how much spin? You can still push this type of ball. Okay, at the moment of contact. Go. The backspin he served was very heavy. This isn't for sidespin topspin. For sidespin topspin, shouldn't you be flicking? Someone just asked, if the serve is that heavy, can you still use this flat push? It's precisely because you don't use finger and wrist friction that it's easier to get it on the table. If you do, you might misread the spin. Let me show you. See, with finger and wrist friction, it's very easy to hit the net. Without using your fingers and wrist, just push it forward like this. It's so much easier to get on the table, it's less affected by spin. When the ball hits your racket, you just guide it over. No matter how much spin, you can guide it, just like a chop. Now, we're just adding a little downward push to this guiding motion to make the ball faster. On this basis, it's not easily affected by spin. If the national team can use it against any server, then we amateurs can definitely do it. This is different from a block. A block is when you stop abruptly on contact, which makes you susceptible to spin. The flat push sends it forward and downward. Next, let's talk about the push flick. When the incoming serve is super heavy, using a flat push means the opponent's next loop will be loaded with topspin, making it almost impossible to defend. Then you need to proactively turn that backspin into topspin. How do I proactively turn backspin into topspin? With a push flick. Can I push flick a backspin ball this heavy? Yes, you can. For any spin, even a deep chop to the baseline, for a ball like that. As long as I open my racket face like this, it'll go on the table. The only thing is, my return won't have much spin. Why do some coaches tell you to open your racket face? Because at least you can get the ball on the table. With a push flick, you can turn any short ball, no matter how spinny, into a topspin ball. But with this technique, because you need to create an arc against spin, it's relatively slow. The opponent might counter with a quick loop or flick, and will be passive. So its value isn't as high as a short push. But it doesn't mean you can't use it. If the opponent's backspin game is very strong, their loops against backspin are very strong, then I think we should proactively turn backspin into topspin. So, I'll use the push flick. I suggest you practice two types, a half spin, half no spin push flick, and a topspin push flick. What does half spin, half no spin mean? It's when you push a ball and it pops up. But when you try to power flick it, it goes into the net. That's a half spin ball. As for side spin topspin, you can't push it down, it just flies off. You need a normal flick to handle that spin. The push flick is most effective against these two types of balls. For all in-table techniques, short push, chop, sideswipe, cut, flick, you must be very close to the ball. When there's distance between you and the ball, it's easy to push long. When you try to use power from a distance, it's easy to flick long. For all short game, my feeling is I must be right on top of the ball to execute the stroke. Whether it's pushing, flicking, or dropping it short, you need to stay glued to the ball and focus on late-stage acceleration. The principle is, the more spin on the ball, the more you contact its middle. The less spin on the ball, the more you contact its upper part. So if I want to push flick this half-spin ball, I must contact the middle, because hitting the top will make it go into the net. Okay, serve a half-spin ball. See? I'm hitting more of the middle, right? The racket face is still a bit vertical. If he serves sidespin topspin and you hit the middle too much, the arc will start to pop up, because the ball kicks up off your racket. So you're very likely to pop it high. In this case, we need to hit the middle to upper part of the ball. Close the racket face a bit to push, which keeps the arc down. Just understand it this way. The more spin, the more you aim for the middle. The less spin, the more you aim for the top. Then you can control the ball. The biggest difference between a push flick and a regular flick is that a regular flick uses the wrist and fingers, while a push flick uses the forearm with a fixed racket angle. For example, with a half-spin ball, you can't do this. See? The racket face wavers. Or this, where the racket angle changes. You can't do a push flick that way. The racket angle, from preparation to contact to follow through, must be consistent. Let me show you. See, the racket face must be consistent for the shot to be stable. A normal flick involves a change in racket angle. This shot, push flick, is done with a fixed racket face, using mainly the forearm to retract and push for power. I'll add some quality, like in a match. Watch those shots. Did the wrist rotate? No. Did the forearm or upper arm swing upward? No. Instead, I met the ball, stayed close, and generated power from back to front. So how do I generate quality with this shot? A regular flick is mainly powered by the fingers, rotating the racket head, opening the racket face, creating distance, and flicking like that. Why is the push flick simpler? Why is it used more in major competitions? Because with wrist movement, if your judgment of spin isn't precise, you'll either hit it long or into the net. As you get to a higher level, you'll find that with looping too. the longer the friction time and the looser the wrist, the higher the error rate. If the racket face wavers even slightly, your defense will also go long or into the net. With the push flick, because the wrist is actually tensed and it's mainly forearm driven, the error rate is very low. For example, at 9-9 in a game, would you dare to flick like this, with the wrist? Of course not. Because if you want a quality flick, if your wrist stops a fraction of a second too late, the racket face wavers, you misjudge the spin, and you'll make an error. This all depends on your own ability. So, why are world champions using the flat push and push flick more now? I think if it's trending, it's for a good reason. It's more stable. In our era, it was all about the power flick. Nowadays, you don't see that kind of whippy flick anymore. If you served a short, slightly high ball, when we were young, we'd even jump to power flick like this. That's all gone now. Nowadays, players prefer to loop early over the table or use the chiquita. So that, power flick, technique is considered unstable. The most crucial part of the push flick is cocking the wrist back. The wrist feels like this. What does that mean? It means you get your wrist into this state and push with it, because it's a push flick. So your wrist must be cocked back, like this. It's not like this, with a loose wrist. You can only push with your wrist cocked back. This technique is only for short, in-table balls. Half-long balls should be looped. Long balls should definitely be looped. You are pushing forward with your wrist cocked back. Remember this backspin principle: the more spin, the more you need to get under it to push. For flicking, the more spin, contact the middle, the less spin, contact the upper part. Serve me a hook side spin topspin. See, you see this kind of ball a lot in matches, right? Sometimes it's half long. Serve one like that. Right, folks. It's kicky. Yes, I'll teach you a secret trick. I just brush the ball sideways. For example, I'll use my backhand to receive one. Watch how I brush it. Now watch my forehand. Because some players serve very kicky short or long balls. For long balls, when it's very kicky, I won't go forward. I'll go a bit sideways, or brush it like this to reduce the forward momentum. Because if I just block it, they'll attack me. Against left-sided spin, I do this a lot, because a backhand flick is more likely to go out. When the ball is very spinny or kicky, don't force it forward. Force it sideways. Let me demonstrate one more. Look, this side spin hook serve is the spinniest, right? What do you do with this ball? See, completely press down on it. Press down and brush the middle upper part of the ball sideways. In a match, there's no absolutely correct technique. As long as you can neutralize the ball and get it on the table, it's a good technique. This works for defense, too. Against heavy topspin, swipe it slightly sideways to easily keep the ball in play. For instance, when dealing with a kicking hook serve with topspin, a standard return will likely fly long. Look, I can angle my wrist outward a bit to receive it with a sideswipe. This helps to counteract the incoming topspin. I take a detour. Don't just meet it head-on. A lot of errors come from meeting the ball head-on. Don't always move straight up and down, straight back and forth. The ping-pong ball is round. For many balls where I feel I might misread the spin, I'll also push like this, as I shared a few days ago. On the forehand push, go left, on the backhand, go right. It's the same for flicks. If you feel the ball has a lot of spin, you can brush it, go to the sides. Same for long balls. If you feel it's too spinny and hitting it straight will make it go out. See, you make a small circle. And even with power, I won't make a mistake. It seems like many of our shots are just too direct. So for the push flick, first, a normal forward motion. For half-spin balls, keep the racket a bit more vertical. Use your forearm to flick forward, keep the racket face stable, and hit at the peak. For sidespin topspin, I press down on the middle upper part of the ball to push flick, also at the peak. If the person's hook or backhand serve is very kicky or breaks sharply, then you should flick with sideways friction. Flick it with a slicing motion, and it won't go out. Same with half-long balls. They're tricky, you try to loop, and they just fly long. For this kind of ball, you can use a smaller motion, press down and swipe sideways for better control. When I play a real match, my strokes won't be as textbook as when I'm teaching. It's impossible. Many of my backhands here are like this, over there are like that, even for high balls. In a match, don't overemphasize technique, because the form is just a basic framework. In a match, you have to find ways to deal with the opponent's ball. For a very kicky ball, I'll hit it sideways. For a very spinny ball, I'll lift it and then use my forearm to add more spin myself. For example, side spin backspin. If I loop it normally, it'll go in the net, right? So what do? When I was young, I figured out a solution. After my fingers and wrist make contact, I lift my forearm a bit more. Like this, you can loop it up. If you loop like this in practice, I'd say you're using your upper arm too much, lifting too high. But in a match, you have no choice. This is why we teach the follow through to this position, but then some people say, "Coach, the pros finish over there." It's because in a match, they also want to get the ball on the table. Don't restrict your improvisation in a match. You need to find shortcuts and methods. It's not a competition of who has more textbook form. Why do I like Morgard? I feel like he doesn't have very textbook strokes. He has different ways of handling different balls. I think we amateurs should really be like that. If you chase perfect form too much, you'll find you only have good form, but you can't win matches. Look at Morgard's strokes, none of them are textbook. If he came to me, I'd have to correct his form.